Hello everyone, I am Rod and I am the game design instructor for the Academy of Entertainment Arts over at Dixie Hollands High School. If you are one of my students, it's Mr. Flowers to you, and welcome to this video tutorial. Good evening everyone. In this tutorial we'll go over how to create a vehicle in Maya and export it out to the Unreal Engine 4. I'm actually in the Unreal Engine 4.17.2. So if you are in an older version, this is the update. If you've been looking for an updated version of this particular tutorial, here it is. So you can see here's a vehicle, and of course I can drive. If you're just interested in the wheel fix, like if you've already set all this stuff up and you know how to set the car up and you're just looking for how to fix the wheels so that they work, there's an annotation below here that will take you straight to that particular video. If you want to know how to set up the car from scratch and get the hierarchy all set up, continue watching. Okay, I'm going to hit escape here. I'm going to jump over into Maya. So I am in Maya 2016. I'm in the student version, but whatever version you're working with, most of this is the same. The big issue that a lot of amateur developers are running into, and I ran into this myself when trying to do this for one of my students, is you got to make sure that you're in the correct axis orientation. To do that, let's make sure that we're set up. Go ahead and if you don't see your tool window here, go up and hit the tools, the little tool button. Conversely, you can just double click on the move tool and you can see axis orientation. By default, it's set to world, and this is what's really messing a lot of folks up, that it does need to be set to object. And just so that you know what they are, let me put it in a box real quick. Create polygon primitives cube. I'm going to set this cube up. Let's see, I'll do 500, 150, and then depth of 200. You might wonder why my settings are as they are. This is about the size of a car in Unreal. Unreal does everything in centimeters, and so this is 500 centimeters long by 150 centimeters tall and 200 centimeters wide. You might think, well, your width and your depth are messed up. Well, they're not. Unreal accepts the car body pointing in the X direction. You want the X-axis to be your front. So your front is your depth in this case. So just want to make sure that it is going to be pointing toward the X. Normally we work with Z forward, so Z is usually the depth, but Unreal wants this to be done on the X pointing forward. So the big issue is making sure we're in the proper orientation. So you can see we have our world coordinates and our object coordinates. And the big difference between these two, world coordinates have to do with the actual environment that you're in, the world of Maya. The absolute zero position inside the world is 0, 0, 0. So when I move this object, you can see up here where it translates, it has moved in the world to a position of minus 388 point whatever. So that's its relation to the world. However, if I go to object, okay, it can have its own object orientation relative to itself. So all the pieces of this object, the components, the faces, the edges, the vertices, all of those look at the object's point of origin as its own frame of reference. And that's what Unreal's looking for. It wants to know the object's orientation relative to itself, not relative to the world. Kind of give you more of a view on that. If I select this object and I rotate it, and then I go back to my pivot point, you can see how my pivot has turned. But if I switch back to world, you can see that the world pivot is still, you can see the world pivot is vastly different than the direction of our object. Okay. Now, Unreal is looking for the orientation of the object. It doesn't care about the world that it came from. So it's very important that we are in object orientation. 3D Studio Max and Blender call it local, and they're the same thing. Local coordinates and object coordinates are the same thing as far as my eye is concerned. Okay? Big-winded spiel, but that is what that means, just so you guys know. Alright, so making sure we're in object, I'm going to go ahead and zero these back out. So here's the basic shape of my car, and I'm going to hit F10 and just give it a bit of a taper here so it looks car-like. And hop into object mode. I'm going to go into my front view here. It says front down here, but it really is my side view. Just going to move this up. So I'm going to hold down X, and I'm going to move this up a bit. That's good enough. And then I want to make sure that the pivot point is at the bottom. So I'm going to hit Insert on the keyboard. I'm going to hold down the X key, and I will just snap my pivot point to the grid. There we go. Hit Insert again to get rid of that. And that's fine. Now I want to make my tires. I'm going to go up to polygons here. I'm going to drop in a cylinder. Now I'm just going to set my radius to 50, the height to 20. I'll go ahead and pull this tire out. You can see it's rotated here. And I want to rotate my tire 90 degrees. And I'm going to position my tire right where I want it, which is right about there. All right. And from the top view, just going to snap this guy right about there. Now, if you're having a hard time snapping, I'm just holding X on the keyboard. Okay, so there's my tire, there's my car. And now I need to name this. I'm going to name the car body. Unreal's going to use these names to set up some bones for us. I'm going to grab the wheel, and this one, if I orient myself to the car, this would be my front right. So I'm going to name this tire underscore front right. I'll go ahead and duplicate that, Control D. I'll drag that off, get it into a position that I like. I'm going to name this one tire rear right. And grab both of those. I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate them. I'm going to drag these over. And I just want to make sure that they're even. It doesn't really matter for this particular example, but if you're making a car that you're going to use for an actual game, you do want them to be even. Otherwise, you'll have a lopsided vehicle. Alright, looks like my Z translation there is 123. I'll just copy that over. So I'll make that minus 123. Whoops. There we go. And now I'm going to rename my wheel here, make sure that this is tire front left. And then this one's going to be tire rear left. Alright, so my wheels are all in good position. And now comes the tricky part. So So the way Unreal reads this is our wheels need to be zeroed out, but our orientation axis needs to be pointing so that X is front, Y is left and right, and Z is up. To get that to work, we need to rotate these all -90, but we can't rotate the wheels because Unreal will think that's weird. We need to rotate the car and then parent the wheels to the car. So I'm going to take the car body and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. That's going to push it toward the left. And then I got to zero this out. I'm going to go up to modify. I'm going to grab my transforms here. And for the car body, it's okay if we zero all these out. So I'm going to go ahead and hit translate, rotate, scale, and I'll hit apply. Now I'm going to take my car body and I'm going to rotate it -90. And you can see when I do that, that my Z arrow is up, my Y is left and right, and my X arrow is forward. Okay? And I need to leave this rotate -90 here. That has to be there. All right? I'm going to grab the wheels, grab all of them, and then select the car. So hold Shift, select the car, press the P key. That will parent. So now all of my wheels are parented to the car, but you can see that their axis of orientation, they are pointing the wrong way. I need to get these rotated -90. Well, how do I do that? The trick is, now that they are a parent of the car, I can freeze their rotations and they will snap to the correct rotation. But I don't want to freeze the translations. These have to stay for the tires. But I do need to freeze the rotation. So in my freeze transforms window, I'm going to uncheck my translate and I will uncheck my scale. And the only one I'm going to use is my rotate. So when I hit apply, you can see that that wheel is now rotation 0. And if I hit my move tool, you can see that the wheel is now pointing in the correct way. So I'm going to grab this wheel, that one, and the last one, and make sure I'm only freezing the rotations. There we go. So now the wheels are pointing in alignment with the car. I'll go ahead and close this. And now we're ready to export this vehicle. The last thing we should do is really clear off any of our history. So I'm going to select this, select all of the wheels, go up to edit, delete by type, and then history. This will get rid of any extra gobbledygook that we don't need. All right. With this selected, let's go ahead and export this. I'll go to File, I'll do Export Selection. I'm just going to save this in my graphic design folder. You can put it wherever you like. You can put it on your desktop or wherever. This is just going to be in my graphic design folder here. I'm going to do soapbox car. If you have your own car, you can name it whatever you like. But I'm just going to call it soapbox car. And we want the file type to be FBX export. If you don't see that, just make sure that you go down and grab FBX export. And in our export settings, make sure that smooth groups are on. Yeah, smoothing is fine. We don't want to do anything else. Kind of scroll down. We don't have any animation, so you can uncheck animation. And then I'm going to scroll down to units, make sure that's set to automatic. If it's not automatic, make sure it's in centimeters. And then your axis conversion. This just helps Unreal figure out which axis your object came from. Unreal can figure it out. Some programs can't. So if you're going into an application where Z is up, then you would want to export with Z up. If you're going to a place where Y is up, you need to export with Y is up. Z is up in Unreal, but Unreal will figure it out. It doesn't really need to be set, but if it bugs you, you can. I'm going to not just to show you that it doesn't matter. And then type version is FBX 2016 because I am using Maya 2016. and then I will hit export. Okay. Make sure you save your file because you never know when it will break. And now let's jump into Unreal. So in Unreal, we want to start a new project. So I'll go up to New, Project. And for the sake of sanity, and so you guys know everything that we have to do, choose a blank project. And down here, for starter content, I have this set to no starter content. You can have it if you want, but mine's going to be an empty canvas. If you want to see exactly what I'm doing and how I do it, just follow that. I call this soapbox car 2. And then I'll hit create. Alright, so now that we're inside of Unreal, we are going to start setting some stuff up. I'm in version 4.17.2. So I like to see my content with a 2 view, so I'm going to hit this little thing that says show or hide sources panel. I'm going to select my content folder. I'm going to add new folder. I'm just going to call this my car. You can kind of call it whatever. Inside my car, I'm going to want to create my game class. So add new blueprint class. And this is going to be a game mode base. Go ahead and select game mode base. I'm going to call this my car game mode. With our game mode selected, we're going to set this up in our properties. So go up to edit and then go to project settings. And then in project settings under project, go to maps and modes. I'm going to collapse this here. And then we're right here where it says default game mode. Our default game mode is going to be our car game. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit the drop down and look for my car game mode. Alright, and then while we're here, we'll set up our controls. So scroll down to engine and then go to input. And then under bindings, we're going to go to axis mapping. Go ahead and hit the little plus sign. Once you hit the plus sign, there'll be a drop down. Go ahead and open the drop down. And we want one more for that one. And then one more axis mapping. And I'll hit the plus sign once more, so that opens 2 for each. This is going to be my move forward. So move forward. My move forward is going to be my W key, so I'm going to go ahead and set my key to keyboard. Scroll down to the key I'm going to use. I'm going to use W. And then for my next key, I'm going to go and hit the S key. Keyboard, S key. Now, the scale value is how much is it going to update. So this is updating by 1 in a positive direction. And to move backward, I'm going to update by 1 in a negative direction. So I'm going to hit that and do -1. And then for my turning radius, or my turning value, I'll say turn right. Or you could do turn left. It doesn't matter what you call these, just so long as you know what they are. So I'll stay at turn left. And then to move left and right, I'm using the A and the D keys. So I'm going to go ahead and pick my first key. I'm going to say keyboard. I'll go ahead and grab the D key. So that's when I turn right. And then keyboard, grab the A key. And this will be when I turn left. And left is towards 0 on the axis, so that's going to be a negative value. So there we go. I'm going to hit the close button. And now let's go ahead and import our car. So I'm going to go ahead and hit import. I'm going to choose my soapbox car, hit import or open. And then with the FBX import window, go ahead and check skeletal mesh. We don't have a skeleton to attach to it just yet, but Unreal will create one for us. Just leave this at none and then hit import. It says it can't find a bind pose. That's okay. It will be populated for us. Just hit cancel. And now we want to check and make sure our skeleton is correct. So go ahead and open that up. So inside the skeleton window, we have car body, and then all of our tires. So if I kind of pan down here, you can see that my bone for the car body is on the floor, which is where you want it to be because Unreal uses this as our root, and that's how the car kind of stays up in position. If yours is not on the floor, that means you either did not move the pivot point down when you were in Maya, or you did not zero out the translations of your car. If you didn't do either of those, back up the video and go watch that again. And then your tires should be on each tire. If your tire bones are not pointing to the tires like they are here, that means you may have accidentally zeroed out the translations of the tire. Remember, the translations of each tire need to be there, but the rotations need to be zeroed. So make sure you zero out the correct thing. Everything on mine looks good, so I will go ahead and hit close. And now I need to update my physics asset. So go ahead and double click on the physics asset and move over here. You can always test it. Hit play. There it is. I'm going to set up a new one. I'm going to hit car body. I'm going to come down, hold shift, and hit the bottom one. And I will right click and just hit reset. We're going to make ones that are more accurate. So under collision geometry, I'm going to come down to single convex hull. And this will make shapes that match our car. I'll go ahead and hit OK. And I can hit simulate again, and you can see this matches our car a little bit nicer. If yours is flying around doing something goofy, that means your axes are not correct. You want to make sure that the car body has a minus 90-degree rotation and that the wheels have a 0 rotation and that the wheels are parented to the body. It's very important. It gets weird if you don't do that. And then I will go ahead and exit this. Okay. So now what we need is a blueprint for our car. So let's go ahead and add new. Go to blueprint. And we want a vehicle class. Let's go ahead and hit all classes and type in vehicle. And down here you'll see a little pawn, and it's a wheeled vehicle. Go ahead and select that. Name this whatever your car name is. Mine's soapbox car, so soapbox car underscore BP for blueprint. With our blueprint good and ready, I'm going to open that up. And in the blueprint window, to my left here, I have mesh inherited. Go ahead and add that. When you select it, the details will pop up, and we have mesh. This little purple thing here, go ahead and hit the drop down and grab your car, and your car will pop in. Next, we want to set up a camera for our car. So to do that, we need to set up a spring arm for our camera to be hooked to. So go up to Mesh Inherited, and then select Add Component. And then in the search components, type in spring. You can see spring arm is right there. I'll go ahead and grab that. For my spring arm, you can make it as long as you like, but I'm going to set target arm length to 600. You can see the pole goes out there. Then back on my left, I'm going to grab my spring arm and I'm going to add a camera to it. So add component, and just type in camera. And there's two types. You have a cinematic camera and you have a regular camera. Cinematics are more for making movies. The regular camera is for like a pawn, so go ahead and grab that. There's my regular camera, and it is attached to my spring arm. I'm going to select the spring arm, and I will just move it in position for my car. So there. And spacebar lets me move it, so I'm just going to pivot it up a little bit. That's good enough. And I will hit compile. Alright. Now we need our wheels. So to set up the wheels, over on our left, select Vehicle Movement Inherited. And grab that. To the right, I'm going to collapse a bunch of these down. And I'm going to go to the one that says Vehicle Setup. And inside Vehicle Setup, we have Wheel Setup. Go ahead and open that. And you see we have 4 wheels right here, 0 through 3. So go ahead and open these up. And you want to make sure that where it says bone name, that this is the name of our wheel bone. So we have 4 bones. We have our tire underscore front left. And then we have our tire front right. And then the next wheel will be tire rear left. And then tire rear right. Okay, so we should have our tire front left, tire front right, tire rear left, and tire rear right. Go ahead and hit compile. And then go over to Event Graph. That's this guy right here. Open that up. In the event graph, we need a few things. We need to set up the control for our car, and we also want to make sure the collision is correct. So first things first, we don't need these two. This begin overlap and begin event tick. We don't need those. So I'll just go ahead and delete these. And then this one, go ahead and get rid of this annotation here. On our event play, I'm going to go ahead and drag off a wire, and I'm just going to type in execute command. So execute, and then we want the execute console command. This will let us see the collision. So where it says command, type in capital PXVIS space capital C for collisions. So that should be PXVIS collision. And we can even give it a comment if you select this and press C. Get a little comment box, and we'll just say check collision. Then under that, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to look for our movement components that we made earlier. So type in input, and you should see under axis events the move forward and the move left that we made earlier. So move forward, go ahead and add that in here. And I also want that move left. So grab that, type in input, I'm going to grab my turn left. There it is. Next I want the steering component and the throttle component. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to type in throttle, and we want this set throttle input. Go ahead and grab that. I'm going to set this here. I'm going to delete this vehicle inherited thing. I'm going to get rid of that. Right click, I want to get a set steering input. So set steering input. And get rid of this. So our target will be our move vehicle inherited. So vehicle inherited, I'll go ahead and drag that in. Now I know these came in with one, but I'm always a little worried that it's going to come in with the wrong one. So I just make one just in case. I'll just plug this into both. And then my input axis is going to go into my throttle control. And then the axis value will plug into axis value. My turn left will go into my steering. And then my axis value will plug into the steering axis. Awesome. Let's go ahead and create a comment. I'll select my input axis. I'll press C. Then I'll just drag up this comment box. and I'll just call this vehicle movement. So that will handle our vehicle movement. This one will handle our collision. Go ahead and press compile. I'm going to exit this window. And it's just about ready for us to actually play the car. So let's make the floor useful. Go ahead and select the floor and just delete this. Under geometry, drag in a box. I'm going to set the location of my box to 0, 0, 0. And then under brush settings, I'm going to have my X be 10,000. I'll set the Y to 10,000. And I'll set my Z to 20. That should give us enough road. Alright. Next we want to set up our default pawn. So open up our car game mode again. So open that up. And then under my classes, I'm going to go ahead and choose default pawn. Hit the drop down. And I'm going to pick soapbox car blueprint. Then compile. If you could not find it under your car game mode, if you could not find that here, you could also do it under Edit, Project Settings, and then under your Map and Modes, where it says Default Game Modes, you can hit the drop down, and you can also set your default pawn right here. You can also set it there. So if you couldn't find it here, you can find it inside the project settings. Okay, so now that that is set up, we should be able to hit play and see our car. Bam, and there's our car. And if I push forward, my car does drive, and I can, of course, move. Yay! Yay! But you can see that when I go to turn, my wheels do not do the turning thing. So I'm going to hit escape, and we're going to set up our wheels. So go up to Add New, and we need a blueprint class. Inside the blueprint classes, I'm going to type in wheel, and I'm going to choose vehicle wheel. Hit select. I'm going to name this wheel front. And then with our wheel front blueprint, I'm going to right click on it and hit duplicate. And this is going to be our wheel rear blueprint. Now the front blueprint should be fine by default, but the rear one we're going to want to set. So go ahead and open that one up. And in the rear wheel blueprint, come down to steering angle. It's this one here, and just set it to 0. That way it doesn't turn. Hit compile. And we're going to add these to our vehicle blueprint. So open up the soapbox car blueprint. Go to viewport. And then select your vehicle movement inherited. And under vehicle setup, go down to wheels. And go ahead and open these again. And where it says wheel class, on the front tires, we're going to set it to a front wheel. So wheel front. And then for my other front tire, that'll also be wheel front. And then for my rear wheels, I'm going to set these to wheel rear. And then wheel rear. Awesome. Go ahead and hit compile. And just so you can see, I'm going to move my spring arm. You don't have to do this part. I'm just going to make it easy so you can see. I'm going to take my spring arm here. And I'm just going to move the camera to the side so you can see the wheels are going to do their thing. Usually this thing's in the back, but this is fine. It's just so you can see the wheels are moving. So there they are. And the wheels, you can see the little, you see the black collision box moving. So we know the wheel is doing its thing. It's a good sign. Okay. So lastly, we need to set up the animation blueprint. So go up to Add New, Animations, and then Animation Blueprint. We're choosing a vehicle animation instance, and then it wants a skeleton. So soapbox car skeleton, and then hit OK. Going to name this soapbox car underscore anim for animation. Go ahead and open that. And we have this final animation pose. I'm going to drag this wire off this little result character. Drag this out. And I'm going to type in wheel handler. So wheel. If you type in wheel and nothing shows up, just go over where it says context sensitive and uncheck this. There you go. And we want a wheel handler. This should come in with a component to local. So drag these out. And then lastly, we need a mesh starting pose. So go ahead and drag off a wire from this one and type in mesh. And we need the mesh space reference pose. Go ahead and drag that off. Hit play. You can see that's updating. That's good. I'll close this. And now we want to put our animation into our blueprint. So open up our soapbox car blueprint. Select Mesh Inherited. And then under Animation, we have Use Animation Blueprint. And then under that, we have Animation Class. Go ahead and open up Animation Class and choose the soapbox car animation. Hit Compile. And let's test the game. We should be able to see everything working now. So there's our car. And there we go. Car's working, wheels are rolling. Awesome. Now if you have any questions about the radius of the wheels, you can see the little black radius inside there. That's the collision boundary. If that isn't big enough for you, you can change that in the wheel settings. So if we go into the wheel blueprint here, we have shape radius. Right now it's set to 30. I'm going to set it to 50 because that's the size of my actual wheel in Maya. And then I'll hit compile. And when I play, you should see that the wheels are more appropriately sized for the front. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for the back. So rear wheel, I'm going to set my radius to 50. And then hit compile. Awesome. And with that, that about concludes the vehicle setup and rigging export into Unreal from Maya. If you have any questions, you are welcome to send me an email or drop a comment. Hopefully this has helped you out, especially those Maya users. I know this has been a bit of a headache for Maya users up to this point. Hopefully this solves some of those issues. And I will see you guys next time.